President instructs officials to subject all who arrive from overseas to PCR tests and to direct them for quarantine based on test results. Who is the American diplomat who refused to undergo the PCR test upon arrival at the BIA? Mount Lavinia beach engulfed in waste material. Another coal power plant to be constructed in Norochole.
Good evening, this is Primetime News on TV1. On to a lead story. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is instructed to carry out PCR tests for COVID-19 on passengers at the airport upon arrival to Sri Lanka and to direct them to quarantine. These remarks had been made during the meeting with the members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and a team of specialist doctors.
The Health Minister, the Director General of Health Services, the commanders of the Tri-Forces and specialist doctors were among those who attended the meeting. During the discussion, the President had instructed direct passengers to a separate area until the results are released before following the immigration procedure. He had also instructed to direct them for quarantine centers after receiving the results of the tests. Matters concerning carrying out PCR tests on Sri Lankans returning from Middle Eastern countries and the problems faced with regard to the quarantine procedure had been discussed extensively during the meeting. The President's media division said steps had been taken to expedite the process of releasing the results of PCR tests and to make PCR testing facilities available at the airport. Officials had also discussed the possibility of conducting tests on passengers at their point of departure with the intervention of the governments of those respective countries. The President had opined that these measures would contribute towards minimizing the problems faced while quarantining passengers or sending them to hospitals amid delays in identifying coronavirus patients.
The number of COVID-19 patients in Sri Lanka has risen to 1,790. The epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health said so far 40 patients have been reported today. 36 of them are naval officers. They are currently being placed at the quarantine facilities in Kandakadu and Oluville. Now, 3 people who arrived in the country from India and a person who arrived in the country from Bangladesh are among the patients tested positive for COVID-19 today. 940 COVID-19 patients are currently receiving treatment in hospitals. 3 patients recovered and were discharged from hospitals today. The number of total recoveries in Sri Lanka stands at 839. Now, in some headline making news, a diplomat attached to the US Embassy in Colombo had refused to undergo PCR testing at the Bandar Naik International Airport this morning. Speaking News First, Deputy Chairman of Airport and Aviation Services Limited, Rajiv Suryachi said the US national in question was released without being subject to PCR testing as he enjoyed diplomatic privileges.
The US national had arrived in Sri Lanka at 1:30 this morning on board the Qatar Airways flight QR668.
This individual refused to get tested and kept on informing of his diplomatic immunity to our authorities when they tried to direct him to a PCR test. After sorting the advice as to what steps should we take to release a diplomat to the country from the airport, we released him from the BIA. Diplomats do have a special immunity because it's an international affair. The respective embassies take up that responsibility to direct such people to quarantine them and the PCR tests. They provide the relevant information to the government through the Foreign Ministry.
However, contradictory to this, the Director General of Health, Specialist Dr. Anil Jasinghe says that a foreign national who arrives in the country cannot refuse to undergo a PCR test. Adding further, he said that normal passengers and diplomats alike have to undergo PCR testing upon arrival in the country. Dr. Anil Jasinghe said that none of the officials at the BIA had informed him of this incident taking place at the airport premises. When queried, Minister of Foreign Relations Dinesh Gunawardena said the Foreign Secretary should be contacted for more information regarding the incident. However, the Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Ravinath Ariyasinghe, said that he cannot take responsibility for a person who arrived at the BIA being released from the airport. The US Embassy in Colombo, in response to a query raised by Newsfirst, stated, quote, The arrival of US diplomatic staff to Sri Lanka also complies with the norms and procedures outlined in the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, unquote. Tamara Kunanayagam, a former Sri Lankan permanent representative to the United Nations, said, although diplomatic immunity is granted, according to Article 41 of the Vienna Convention, diplomats must respect the laws and regulations of the receiving state. A noteworthy factor is that the first PCR test at the BIA, after the regulations were put in place, was conducted on a diplomat attached to the European Union. She had undergone a PCR test without any reservations. Meanwhile, the Belt and Road Initiative in Sri Lanka, affiliated to the Chinese government, has posted the following on its official Twitter handle. It notes the Sri Lankan Foreign Ministry had already informed all diplomat corps about the quarantine request, which is not violating the Vienna Convention. They question as to why the US Embassy is not following the regulations set out by Sri Lanka, and whether a Sri Lankan diplomat can do the same in the United States. This is a dangerous situation. The coronavirus can affect anyone, even if it is an official of the US Embassy. Therefore, the health authorities and the government must adopt the relevant course of action. Otherwise, a confusion will arise if different people attempt to change the law. I believe that the President must respond to this situation as to whether this official has been able to enter the country in the manner due to the AXA or SOFA agreements, and whether officials can enter the country against the backdrop where the MCC agreement has not been signed. We need to know whether the regulations of the agreement are being enforced even without signing it. Questions have arisen on whether US officials will be able to enter and leave the country at their own will amidst the coronavirus pandemic if the agreement is signed, given the President's ties with the United States. As a country, we have established quarantine rules and have forced the people to follow them. The health authorities and security forces have also intervened. Although this is a hassle to the people of this country, they have been very patient. But we have come across instances where the laws are applied to different people in different ways. This American has refused to undergo PCR tests and has entered the country. Our government has failed to prevent the American national from doing so. He does not have the diplomatic immunity to refuse PCR tests and enter the country. This is a violation of the law. I'd like to ask the government why the American state official was given these privileges. The Ministry of Foreign Relations and the Presidential Secretariat must provide an explanation to the people of this country. According to the international health regulations, a disease cannot be transmitted from one country to another. A person arriving from another country must produce the report of a PCR test that he or she had undergone at their respective country. We have now decided to conduct on-arrival PCR tests. Therefore, it is important to undergo the PCR test. The pandemic is spreading across several countries, including the US and the United Kingdom. Therefore, we have to consider that there is a risk of this virus transmitting. The process has to be followed by any passenger, be it a diplomat or an expatriate. Our doctors who had gone to UK and Australia for higher studies had followed the quarantine procedure upon returning to the island. The people will lose their faith in the system if the laws are not implemented.
A large number of Sri Lankans residing overseas are awaiting repatriation. Upon arrival in the country, they are subject to PCR tests and are then directed to quarantine. However, the report we brought to you earlier clearly depicts that all these stringent tests and procedures are not applicable to foreign nationals. Now back in news here at home, these were some of the views expressed in the political arena regarding the two task forces that were appointed.
The dangerous thing is that the public service has been brought under the Presidential Task Force. The public service is an independent entity, according to the Constitution, that is managed by the Public Services Commission. Therefore, this is against the Constitution. According to the hierarchy in the public service, the secretaries of ministries are above the commanders of the Triforces. However, this Gazette notification has flipped everything upside down. Now, ministry secretaries have to abide by the orders of the Triforces commanders. If they don't do so, they can even inform the president about this. This is a dangerous situation. We can cite this as a move towards establishing a military rule.
A presidential task force has been established. The police department is there to enforce the law. If a person is spreading mischief in a village and is threatening someone or obtaining ransom, information regarding that person can be given to the Presidential Task Force. Complaints can also be filed with the police. If the police do not take action, then complaints can be filed with the task force that will enforce the law equally without being politically biased. The President believes that all the people in the country will support this work plan that aims to establish a secure and a disciplined country.
Large amounts of waste had washed up on the shores of the Mount Lavinia beach today. Residents claim that the amount of waste that had washed up on the beach is significantly higher, although it is common to see waste being washed up during this season.
The Mount Lavinia beach is one of the most popular hotspots for both local and foreign tourists. Signboards have been set up on the beach warning visitors against dumping garbage. In the past, it is bamboo sticks and wooden sticks which would wash up during this season. However, a large amount of plastic has been washing up as of late. We inquired regarding this matter from the mayor of the Dehiwala Mount Lavinia Municipal Council, Stanley Dias, and also inquired regarding the steps that have been taken to clean up the beach. He said steps would be taken to clean up the beach immediately after curfew is lifted.
In 2017, Sri Lanka was ranked the 5th out of top 20 countries in the world that has the most number of polluted beaches. However, if this trend continues, there is a possibility for Sri Lanka to end up at the top of that list.
Meanwhile, a report has revealed that sand nourishment of Mount Lavinia beach appears to have no tangible outcomes concerning the aims of the project. A report named, quote, "The Tragedy of Mount Lavinia Beach," unquote, explains that the exercise appears to have been undertaken without adequate planning and ignoring even the most basic coastal engineering principles. The report, compiled by Professor Charita Pattiarachi of the University of Western Australia, marine biologist Asha DeVos, and Nadia Azmi of Ocean Swell, Sri Lanka Marine Research and Education, reveals that it is expected, through design or otherwise, that the majority of the sand will be washed away from Mount Lavinia beach after the southwest monsoon season. A similar incident was reported from Puttalam in 2018, where clinical waste suspected to have been discarded by India washed ashore. It is of paramount importance to identify where this waste material originated from.
While the once scenic Mount Lavinia beach has been polluted, elsewhere fishermen claim the anchorage port, which was constructed in Talvatta, Peraliya, has proven to be a failure. The objective of this project was completed in late 2017 and was to be developed as an anchorage and fisheries port. This was constructed at a cost of 350 million rupees. As soon as stones were laid to create a breakwater, it was filled with sand. This is a scam. Fishermen point out that the anchorage port could be redeveloped by restoring the breakwater. However, they reveal instead a sand racket is being carried out. Coastal erosion would not occur if this breakwater is replaced. Instead, a sand racket is happening. They are providing sand to known associates for a lower price. During the season, when the seas are rough, we are able to fish using nets because sand would naturally settle on the seabed. But now, we cannot do that either. Please solve this issue. The attempts by Newsfirst to obtain a clarification on this matter through officials attached to the Ceylon Fisheries Harbour Corporation proved futile. The TAB deal, a controversial project of the previous government, was hit with accusations of corruption. Former Education Minister Akila Viraj Karyavasam faced a barrage of accusations over the project to purchase tabs for advanced level students and teachers. Approximately 5 billion rupees had been allocated from the 2017 budget for the implementation of this project. The Cabinet of Ministers at the time had then decided to increase the allocation up to 6.78 billion rupees. The project, which would cost the government at least 7 billion rupees, was cited as a move to procure technologically outdated tabs. While providing evidence before a presidential commission, the Education Ministry's additional secretary for procurement at that time conceded that the procurement process had been riddled with irregularities. Shouldn't an investigation be carried out into these projects that could have resulted in the misuse of public funds?
We want a clean parliament. We want a clean government. Think before you vote.
Farmers of the Rajangania area in the Giribaba Divisional Secretariat continue to suffer due to a shortage of fertilizer.
The villagers of Rajangania, who earn a living through farming, have been severely battered by the shortage of fertilizer. They say that their hopes of reaping a good harvest have diminished due to the current situation. This has been growing for nearly 2 months. This crop has not grown properly due to the shortage of fertilizer. Therefore, we cannot expect a good harvest. We can stay in hunger for a few days. However, if a plant does not receive the required elements to grow, we won't be able to obtain a good yield. Some farmers complain that they are yet to receive fertilizer despite cultivating vegetables and other crops apart from paddy. Farmers are yet to receive fertilizer, although the Agrarian Services Centre has issued coupons to obtain fertilizer at concessionary rates. We used some of the fertilizer 45 days ago. We haven't received the main type of fertilizers yet. We are not served justice despite complaining about this. These farmers, who have toiled hard by obtaining loans and pawning their jewellery, are requesting authorities to implement a mechanism that would grant them some relief. As the former minister highlighted, fertilizer suppliers had not been paid last year. Once we came into power, we paid 9 billion to suppliers through an additional procurement scheme. Due to this delay, fertilizer had not been imported to the country. Once the COVID outbreak struck the country, people began to cultivate more than usual. Lands which were lying fallow were cultivated. Around 20,000 hectares of such land island-wide were cultivated. According to our estimates, the demand for fertilizer has increased twofold as a result. Thus, additional purchases had to be made to meet demand. But given the prevailing situation in the world and due to the shipping lines limiting its operations, there was a delay in obtaining fertilizer. The distribution was done with the assistance of the army. Due to these reasons, this shortage occurred. We believe we can rectify this issue by the next season and manage it better.
Another coal power plant for Chole, a new renewable energy project, relief for depositors of failed financial institutions. These are but some of the cabinet decisions announced at this week. Let's now direct our attention towards a comprehensive report on this week's cabinet decisions.
A media briefing to announce cabinet decisions was held today at the Department of Government Information and was attended by co-cabinet spokesmen Ministers Bandula Gunawardena and Ramesh Patirana.
This step was taken to avoid a national electricity crisis. The cabinet approval was granted for the chairman of the CEB to reach agreements to construct a 300 megawatt power plant expeditiously in Puttalam. The Good Government's government, during the last 5 years, did not commence any large-scale power generation projects in the country. There were lengthy discussions regarding this, and it was discussed to provide solar power to state sector institutions, including hospitals, schools, economic centers, and military headquarters. $100 million has been pledged for this.
ගල්ලංගුරු බලාගාරයේ ගිවිසුමකට එළඹෙන්න කොහොමද එමතුමා මේ ගිවිසුම සම්බන්ධ පොඩි පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද?
ගිවිසුම ගැන පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න අපහසුයි.
It is difficult to elaborate on it because all of that is included in the cabinet paper. Is that the president has instructed the chairman of the CEB to commence such a project in Puttalam in order to avoid an energy crisis.
පුත්තලම ගල්ලංගුරු බලාගාරයේ කටයුතු ආරම්භ කරන්න.
ඒ කියන්නේ පුත්තලම් ගල්ලංගුරු බලාගාරයේ කොයි කොටසද මේ හදන්න යන්නේ?
දන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක අපි ඕනනම් ඒ පිළිබඳ විස්තරය ලබන සතියේ.
Opinions were also expressed regarding complications which arise when providing relief to depositors of ETI. However, it was revealed that relief can be provided to depositors of the finance company.
Several officials of the central bank explained the complications which has arisen in the ETI issue. We cannot provide a release of at least 600,000 rupees because the depositors have initiated legal action. The relief process has been delayed due to the legal activities that are taking place. What was depicted from this meeting was that if a person deposits money at a financial institution, the central bank will only be responsible of up to 600,000 rupees. Therefore, it is important for depositors to know this and also to verify the safety of their deposits.
සුරක්ෂිතතාවයේ ඇති ප්‍රමාණය 6 ලක්ෂයයි කියලා දැනුවත් වීම වැදගත් කියලා මං හිතන්නේ.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa arrived in Kakirawa this morning.
The Prime Minister paid his last respects to the chief incumbent of the Orugal Sai Rajamaha Viharaya, late Venerable Kokmaduwe Ratnajoti Thera. The Thera was 79 years of age at the time of the Venerable Thera's demise. The final rites took place this evening.
An online webinar was held to discuss the potential growth impact Colombo port city would have on Sri Lanka. The following views expressed regarding the revenue the government would be able to generate as a result of the port city project.
The government revenue is going to come from two main sources. One of them is the tax revenue. The other one is the non-tax revenue. If I look at the non-tax revenue, the government is going to get 62 hectares of land, which they can lease out on a 99-year basis lease. Now, once they do that, government will get a major part of their revenue, non-tax revenue. And also, there will be various charges the government will be imposing, like giving approvals, giving licenses. From that also, government is going to make some money. And from the tax side, there will be stamp duty, there will be income tax, there will be tax on employment income, there will be VAT. So all these are going to be a part of the government revenue. Of course, how much revenue the government is going to earn depends on various tax regimes and tax concessions it will grant to various businesses and officers that are operating within the port city.
A woman who had been engaged in heroin trafficking manipulated an organized criminal identified as Ratmalane Anju has been arrested near the Ratmalane railway station. Ratmalane Anju is an organized criminal leader who is in hiding in Dubai, is also a drug racketeer.
Officers attached to the Special Task Force had arrested a 31-year-old woman who had been identified as Ratmalane Jayani. According to the Police Special Task Force, the suspect had distributed heroin free of charge a few days ago to mark the birthday of Ratmalane Anju. The suspect had been in possession of 5 grams of heroin at the time of her arrest. She has been handed over to the Mount Lavinia police for further investigations. Ratmalane Anju is suspected of manipulating the shooting that had been carried out at a hotel in the Soisapura area.
According to Verite researchers' latest survey, Sri Lanka's budget openness has scored 47 out of 100. According to the survey, Sri Lanka has gradually improved the budget transparency in the years 2015 and 2017 cycles.
However, the score still falls below the minimum benchmark score of 61. The open budget score is calculated based on 3 aspects, which is the transparency of the budget, the oversighting of the budget by both legislative and national audit, and by the participation of the public to the budget. Transparency measures public access to information on how the central government raises and spends public resources. It assesses the online availability, timeliness and comprehensiveness of 8 key budget documents. Public participation includes the formal opportunities offered to the public for meaningful participation in the different stages of the budget process. It examines the practices of central government's executive, the legislature and the Supreme Audit Institution. The oversight includes the role that legislatures and Supreme Audit institutions play in the budget process and the extent to which they provide oversight. According to the survey, the legislature and the Supreme Audit Institution in Sri Lanka together provide limited oversight during the budget process with a composite oversight score of 50 out of 100.
I'm Muad Razik, along with our sign language interpreter Brian De Cruz and our producer Tarush Kumar Singer. Now we'll leave you tonight with the best YouTube video of the Nagitimu Sri Lanka song. Thank you for watching. Good night and take care.
Ganmadda Nagitimu Sri Lanka, best YouTube video of the day.
Lanka